Hello and welcome to Subject to Change. We're here with Nicole Snow of Darn Good Yarn to learn about impact.
Look at your awesome space.
People are like, is that a background? I'm like, no, this is my hoarding, my office where I hoard everything. So
It's like it's so much like fun stuff. Like everything's so colorful. I love it.
keeps me
Oh my gosh.
That's
Well,
funny.
I'm Lauren. It's really nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too.
And I'm
Thanks.
Jody, a Darn Good Yarn fan
Oh,
and
hi,
an
Jody.
addicted patron. And I wanted to show you one of my Darn Good Yarn. You know what? I should probably put it on so you can see it better. But I bought one
Oh,
of your recycled silk kits.
those are like my favorite yarns. That looks
Yeah, they're so
awesome.
soft.
It's so
It's
soft.
it's nice and summery and
That looks
like still warm at the
amazing.
same time. I love
So
the
yeah,
colors.
those are dyed. I mean, those are very cool dyes, like indigo. I think one of them.
Yeah.
It's a bark of one of the tree, the pink one. But yeah, it's like really cool stuff.
Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. When you see the little microphone in the lower right, click on that to learn more. We're so glad you're here. Okay, so we dove right into all my fandom. And do you want to take a minute to introduce yourself and Darn Good Yarns, and then we'll talk about the journey that got you there? Because I'm dying to know.
So yeah, I guess I'll just hop into backstory then, and then we can
Backstory.
whatever questions you have, and we'll go
Yeah,
through.
perfect.
Awesome.
I love it.
So yeah, my name is Nicole Snow. I'm the founder and CEO of Darn Good Yarn, and I started my business in 2008. I like to classify myself as a very accidental entrepreneur. I think people say like, oh, usually a question I get is like, how did you come up with the idea? And, did you have a business plan? And I went to Clarkson University, so kind of in your neck of the woods. And I was a business major. I went through Air Force ROTC. I was an officer in the Air Force. I would make all of my business professors cringe. I had no business plan. I just stumbled my way through. And I just sort of followed like what I loved. Like I wanted to learn how to knit. I wanted to learn how to crochet, which I knew nothing of when I started the business. I just had always had a propensity of being a crafty person. I mean, if you're watching this, you can see I'm in my craft room and I like all weird crafts from around the world.
Right.
So I can't help myself. And my American Express definitely shows that. So I just sort of stumbled my way through there, but I never thought of a business that sold yarn on the internet 15 years ago as a way to pay my mortgage. It was just more, maybe I'll make a couple bucks and maybe it'll pay for my craft obsession.
Strong hustle.
I was working 2 other jobs. And as an assistant, I was an assistant for a financial planner. I was assistant for a commercial real estate investor. And my hustle was strong and I was in my 20s. So I had a lot of energy. Could I do it now? No, because I'm 40 and I'm tired. But I realized quickly when I found recycled silk yarn, originally I was getting it out of Nepal. As it's the website itself like started to get traction, which I found really weird. I was like, okay, this is cool. And then the lead time started to expand. So where it might be like, hey, can I get 50 balls of yarn? Like, no joke, these were my open orders back in the day. And I remember thinking to myself, well, if no one buys this, I guess everyone's getting scarves for a very long time out of this one yarn. Like I was like, okay, I can deal with that. But I chose the recycled silk because it was weird, because it wasn't anything I saw in the big box stores from my limited knowledge. And I've always been a little bit of a contrarian. Like I wear really bright colors. I don't really care what people think about me. So the yarn
I love you, by the way. Let's put that out there, right?
and I wound up, thank you. And I wound up I was like, this yarn is kind of Nicole in a yarn ball. And As I started to order more, like, so the 50 went to 100, the lead times just started to swell. And I'm like, hey, what's going on here? So I started to talk to my suppliers, and it was then that I really started to understand this bigger global play. And I didn't know what I was stepping into. It was a very organic, like, when you think about my business, I like to classify us as a triple bottom line company.
Yeah.
We are for profit. I didn't start out with those intentions, and it just, I wound up going, okay, what's going on? Like, why is this swelling up?
Look for the bigger picture.
All right, so I'm learning that these women are making the yarn in their houses during certain times of the year. They're harvesting. They have all of their own side hustles too. So here I am in the US doing my side hustle. Like, I'm getting what's going on here, and they're able to stay with their children when they are at home to spin yarn. So it really is like a true cottage industry. But then there's other times of the year where this is other chances for them to make money. Other ways that these women were making money were, a lot of times were hand rolled cigarettes called biddies.
Wow.
So you're dealing with like tobacco poisoning and stuff from rolling. And I just, in my small way, it was that point, I was like, there's no reason I couldn't try to at least give 10 of these women full-time employment making this yarn. That was seriously my goal. I just wanted to do
That's
that.
marvelous.
And
Use what we have.
I was lucky in a place financially where I have always been a hardcore saver. So people are like, do you have investors or anything like that? No, I started my business with like, it was like between like $2,000 and $4,000. It wasn't that much money. And I've always been a hardcore saver. And I just said, all right, I'm going to build this the right way. And I said,
That's so cool.
let's just figure out, like, let's use what we have. I wasn't trying to like get onto Shark Tank. Shark Tank wasn't even a thing 15 years ago, by the way.
Right, exactly.
The kids have it easy these days. But
no, they don't.
if I had Shopify 15 years ago, I was coding
True.
My photo software back in the day was the free software you got with your digital camera.
Right.
So like the people who are back in, in the Stone Age will get that. But
my God.
I'm
insulted and seen at the same time.
Yeah, no, I was talking about, it happened. It was a very it was a very explorative process because I'm learning about it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people were like, well, just pay them more. Well, let's pause real quick though, because we can't necessarily take our Western ideals and just plop them on top of the country. Like you have to have sensitivity to that. And then you start learning about how high the unemployment rates are in some of these regions that we're working in. 20%, people living on less than $2 a day. Okay, these are
amazing
socioeconomic issues that we don't get unless you've been there. Caste discrimination, gender discrimination. So what I set out to do, and it's been hard and it's been contrarian, I think, to what is taught in mainstream business schools, is like, we have to take out as many machines as possible and create a base of employment.
Yeah.
Even if it's a menial job, it's a secure job. And that's what's missing from these areas. And that process is a long process. That's not like you come in and you write a check to a nonprofit. Nonprofits are great, but this is conscious capitalism at work. Like, we're going to lay the base and then we're going to layer. And that takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people to understand, even in the US, to break through generational poverty, someone has to, I think they have to be in a job full time for 3 years for them to break through generational poverty in this country. Think about that in places where they are, no joke, using dried up cow manure to heat their homes. It's expanded. So there's a sensitivity to that. So that's really, in the last 15 years, we're just going
layering.
It takes layering and time.
Yeah. And actually, if you don't mind, if we take a moment to reflect on that, because that's one of the things that we've discovered in past conversations, is it's the moving There's a person who teaches regenerative practice that talks about you have to slow down to move fast. And it feels like slowing down in a mental state, not necessarily in the work you're doing, but taking the time to see those opportunities and understand them as opposed to just bullying in with what you know has been incredibly beneficial. And the statement you made about things taking time, I think that's what I'm experiencing in the whole transition related to climate change, is that you can't just set a policy and walk away and think that it's going to happen. I mean, you can say heat pumps from now until 3 years from now, and unless you hear how people are relating to them, change your language, introduce them to other ideas, and do that layering you're talking about, you're not going to get there.
Right. And that's
Right.
that's systematic change. I completely agree.
I see a ton of diversity and respect.
Your skirts, that's a whole nother aspect. And now I'm almost sad that we had this interview, because like I got online and now I want to spend money, which is it's so many tops and so many different approaches and so colorful and so celebratory, and so many women of different shapes and sizes and colors on your website. You said conscious capitalism, I think is what you
Yep.
said, and respectful capitalism is also something I would like to put that word there, because it's incredible.
Thank you. I think, and if you have like younger folks listening to this, again, I feel like, yeah, on my team, I'm the old lady of the group. Like everyone is in their 20s, maybe 31, and they're starting to complain about their lack of metabolism all of a sudden. But but there is this, like, there's such an opportunity, I feel, when you're at the, like, oh, I have a business idea. This is the question I've always asked, is how can I do something that's going to make my mom want to brag about it? But man, what if the triple bottom line concept was really like layered onto that from the onset? It makes it all so much easier.
Some sourcing between Nepal and Bihar.
So how did you find the silk to recycle? Like what was the first thing you bought and then sold, and how did you find that thing?
So where Darn Good Yarn started was with our premium recycled silk yarn. It's a hand spun. It comes from loom ends of when silk products are made. So saris or blankets, rugs. So it's all the ends. Those get cut up, carded, and then hand spun, usually drop spindle.
Wow, drop spindle.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So a lot of that you see, especially where like I'm working, where I'm getting a lot of my yarns from, between Nepal and up in northeastern Bihar. There's just a lot of like hand loom industry there, cottage industries there. So that's where a lot of that waste is coming from. In the south, where you were showing the birch bark yarn, I get that more towards Bangalore. That is made out of noil silk. So those are remnants of, say, something is getting stuffed with silk, or you have like a first quality silk, like a raw silk. That's all the waste from that. It's a pretty wasteful process, flies all over the place. So we come back in, recollect it, repurpose it, get that carded, and then I design all of the yarn. Like, so I deal with the ply, I deal with like how I want it dyed, and you just work it from there.
Sounds like heaven.
It's kind of fun. Like, I wish I had more time for that part of it.
Ratings as tools.
I'm a big fan of the just transparency system and B Corp. If a firm wants to attest to that, that's great. I think they're more powerful when a firm doesn't quite know what they need to do, and then they use those tools to get there. To use those tools to inform yourself, that's most of the time free. So you get a chance of, and you're already there. I mean, right. I don't know what your labor practices are, but everything that's evidenced in what I've seen of your company is there.
I
you know?
agree with you on that. The going through the process with B Corp, because I was featured in their magazine a long time ago. So I
Mhm.
had to go through that.
Yeah.
It was, I mean, it was harder to do that than was to get into college. Like these are no
Yeah.
joke applications. But I 100% agree with you. They're a great place to say, well, how are we thinking about this? Like, are we approaching this in a standardized way? There were some things I was like, oh, we're reinventing the wheel on this practice.
Yeah.
Just use this ratio, because a lot of it is, a lot of it's math questions, and redefining it that way. And you just sharpen that up a little bit.
The impact of $100.
I had actually kind of re-recognized Darn Good Yarn when I was traveling somewhere and somebody mentioned Darn Good Yarn. And I said, oh yeah, they're right near me in Albany. So cool. And then Lauren was like on your website and said, I thought this was just a little local company that we're talking to today. And I said, well, yes, and they're a big local company. But it also brings up the question for me. I mean, you're sourcing from the other side of the planet. And it's doing very positive things for you're focusing on the workforce, you're recycling. There are so many good things. Do you have is there any, it's not complexity is not the word. Is there any frustration in you that it's not local sourcing, or do you have a vision of some kind of local material, or is that not on your
That's not on my radar.
Cool.
Only because I think that there are people here in the US that know the systems way better than me.
Mhm.
In India and Nepal, where we primarily work in, I can do a lot more good with $100 there than I can here. Okay, let's set people up with a work week that's enough for them to have their food and their educational and their family's educational needs met, and clothing. Like, let's start there. Like, I understand that, and I feel like that's where I'm compelled. I also feel too, because you're dealing with such high unemployment rates, like there's just a greater impact for us. And as a small company, I have to really think about where that impact is going to be the biggest and best.
Better than doing nothing.
No, and
yeah.
that's great. What I'm getting is that you said very early on that this was also kind of to address your addiction, but I don't think that's really the case. I think you saw an opportunity maybe revealed to you by your crafty nature, but an opportunity that's well beyond making things or finding a home for your stockpile of yarn. I mean, it was about making a difference. And I think that's quite marvelous. People have a lot of there's a lot of fear about making a difference, right? Because what if you screw up? What if you
Better than doing nothing at all. And
there you go.
Wisdom and the grace to forgive yourself.
I remember when I had my daughter, she's 6 now, and
okay, you did all this with a husband and a kid, and that's also another layer of the complexity. Kudos.
I go to a therapist every week. I was
That's
on
another
Ziploc for
layer.
a period of time. Like, I am very open about my mental health, had some areas of concern there for a bit. So anyone who is a business owner, I highly suggest having that therapist along. They are on your C-suite 100%. Because you do need that. You need that, because I would go to my spouse, I go to my family members, and no one gets it when you're sitting in that chair as the owner, and when you have a vision.
Wow.
It's just like you're in that moment, and it's not a better than, it's a different, it's like you're just wired differently. But with my daughter, I remember like originally thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to like screw this up. Like, I remember being stressed when she was in utero and going like, I'm doing exactly what the doctor is telling me not. One was my midwife. I was hippie mom on this one.
Yeah, me too.
Exactly what my midwife's telling me not to do. I remember I got an $80,000 tax bill I wasn't expecting. I thought I was like, I thought I hurt my child. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to screw this up so badly. And I had something really interesting happen, and this sort of helped shape a lot of things from there on. When I was pregnant with her, I wound up breaking 2 of my ribs. It sucked. It was as bad as you think it was. It was horrible. Went to the hospital, and luckily I had a doctor who was from the same region I got a lot of my yarn from.
Wow.
And he was like, "One, you've been there?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "We don't like that's kind of the joke. Like I go to some pretty sketch places, and they and he said to me, he's like, women there just have their babies like, you know, right off in one of their cottages. Like it's not like this." And it just reframed for me, like, you really think you're going to screw up trying to do good in the world? You think you really like, we have it so good. Like you
Yeah.
have to really try hard to screw it up. And it's better to do 20%. And the fear of perfection, I think that's where I've just embraced that it's a very messy, creative process. Like I will screw it up. I will piss people off. This is just part of it. And I'm going to make a couple bad cakes before one really good comes out. And I've just had to learn that in my evolution, but that it came from like that moment of him saying
Yeah.
that, like, yeah, you know what? People have way less and they do way more. So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the grace and the self-respect to forgive, the missteps, because you can't get anywhere without misstepping. You just can't.
no,
My son and I are hikers, and we're very well aware of that. So long as it doesn't result in a broken ankle, we'll take all the missteps we need to take to get there.
yeah,
Little bit of risk assessment,
exactly.
but not analysis paralysis. That's just no good.
Exactly.
Learning to be comfortable in chaos.
I was going to say, so I've just wandered out of finals week at a community college that I work at as well. And the perfectionism that the students have, they get to that point where they're so worried constantly about getting it wrong. And so then they get to a point where they don't even try.
Yeah,
And
horrible.
that I'm like the queen of like, oh my God, like it's all going to fall apart. Even your best plan is going to get flubbed somehow. So just like, you got to just put your best foot forward, and you got to deal with what you have, and you have to make the most out of what you have. And this is something that I'm a little worried about our youth kind of coming up. I don't know what it is, but I'm worried about their ability to like shift perspective.
Hmm.
I feel like if they can't conform or if they can't be perfect, then it's not worth doing. And it's like, oh, that's going to be a really disappointing life led.
Yeah,
Cautious.
I see that with my team. Like I work again, like my team is younger. And I'm really into I love watching them like develop and like they do their little blossomy thing. I had a coach tell me once, well, if you're a rose plant, you need to be put into the proper bed of soil with the proper blah, 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 like proper fertilizer and all this. And I believed that for a long time. But then to your point, my life and the messiness with the business and being able to have the 6-year-old and the husband work for you and all that, and people are like, how did you do it? I let a lot of things go. Like I was able to then become almost like a hydroponic plant. You just kind of pick me up and plop me someplace else. And that, like, it was that kind of releasing that was really like, I'm really comfortable in chaos now. Do I want to be in chaos? No, but like, it's just so much.
It's freeing.
It's freeing. Like, I don't know. And I hope maybe your kids like learn something like that, because there's so few times that it ever works out. I mean, we all know that, right? Like it never works out to plan. You just have to go with it.
Let it go.
So is there one thing in particular that you feel, especially in society in the USA, hyper focuses on as something that every woman in their 40s and 50s needs to have, that we should really be letting go? Like, what's the first thing that occurs to you? I'm going to ask Lauren the same thing. What one thing should each of us just be comfortable letting go?
Great question. I'll tell you my first funny answer, and then I have to actually think of like my serious answer. I think it's fancy underwear, because I'm still like,
Seriously, thank you.
granny panties forever, baby. And leggings need to go in your 40s. That's the other thing I'm gonna say. But I think
Awesome.
man, I don't know if it's a letting go or more of an evaluation of what are the things you've commoditized in your life.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is it's so easy because we are so consumer centric to just like hit the buy button. Like, oh, I need whatever for my garden even. It's like even a couple generations ago, like you kind of just went into your drawer and you figured and you rigged something up.
Yeah.
There's something to that is so empowering that you don't need as much stuff societally around you. And when I look at some of my friends and they're just so unhappy and they're living in these like killer houses, and you're like, yeah, that's I think what it is. It's like that ingenuity, and we have to get back to that.
Yeah. I really appreciate that. Absolutely. We're struggling with that now. Like, how do we maintain and reduce? And we love crafted objects. We love things that have a story behind them. So that has slowed us down in the grand scheme of things. But there are still some things that click was way too easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And could you have used like something else? I don't know how to say, I was pulling up, like I keep notes about things I'm finding out about life right now.
Cool.
But I don't know how to say it, but it's MITATE, and it comes from I think it comes from Buddhism, but I have in here written, it's an abundance, not in the accumulation of things, but knowing how to use things well. So try seeing things in different ways, not just bound to their proper use.
Those damn Joneses.
I think the access to social media and your ability to compare yourself to others. But to the point that you guys are making, then when you see it on social media, or you see the perfect house, or you see the perfect whatever it is that, face cream, hair dye, shoe, house, whatever, then going and overspending. And this idea of like, I think the best thing I did, Jody knows, when I was 40, I literally just burned my life to the ground and started over.
Torture baby.
Yeah. And I just thought, never again am I going to kind of compare myself to others. And I have social media, but I'm never on social media. Meaning I have it so I can post, but I have a pretty specific rule that I won't go on and look at it. And I have friends who, some of the things that they'll send me because they know I'm not on it are funny, but sometimes it just makes me sad because it's like, what could we all be doing with our time that would be more beneficial than watching what other people are doing? It's like forgetting what other people are doing and valuing the life that you want to create. I feel badly that we seem to have gotten caught up in this idea of really like keeping up with the Joneses. And I think it's been detrimental to all of us.
Learn how to just be.
For me, I'm in a point in my career where I'm struggling a little bit, and part of it is from COVID, learning how great it is to work from home and now being required to be back in the office. So I think the thing I want to give up is, or I wish that society would give up, is the idea that you have to actually go someplace else to do work. And then right, and then coupled with that, I think something I've struggled with my whole life is that I always feel like I have to be producing something. I can't just be. I have to, when I go for a bike ride, I actually note how far it was and how long it took me. When I sit and, just to relax, I'm knitting, or I'm starting to write a blog post, or I'm, something. So I have trouble sitting still and just being. I think the only time I come close is when I'm in a kayak, or when I'm, at the the ocean. There's something about water that calms me enough to just be. But we're all, we're tagged with the title, what have you done today? It's even in the titles of our jobs, if
Mhm.
you don't have that title. I'm so connected to my work title that when I was pregnant and ended up leaving a traditional work environment for almost 2 years, I didn't know who I was most of that time because I didn't have a title. So
Jody,
that's something it's a long haul to work on that one.
I'll share with you. My acupuncturist shared this with me long time ago.
Yeah.
And she said, Nicole, like, because I run hard. So
Yeah.
I get it. And I've had to force myself to, when I sit, I try to sometimes just not even knit. Cause I'm like,
Yeah.
no producing, no,
Yeah.
like you need to sit and be a blob right now. And
celebrate the blob.
Celebrate the blob, man. And it's like, it's so hard. And she said, sometimes, Nicole, a seed needs to sit in the ground with the soil around it. And it just needs to like be there, and it will start to germinate and it will make its flower eventually. And that's its production. But there's a lot of other steps to that. And you can't just be flowering all the time. That's what she said to me. And
That's great.
hey, we're all in the Northeast. Like that's what like winter's for. You just tuck in
Yes.
and do that. It's
Cocooning.
yeah,
That's great.
it sits with me though, because my blob time is so infrequent, but when I do, I'm like, okay, I like this is good, and it's a reset. But if you're type A, you only need like 5 minutes of it, and then okay, you gotta
No, that's great. Oh, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for even getting into the vulnerabilities with us of the process, which is cool.
Nicole, who is your hero?
Gosh, I don't want a corny. I don't want a corny answer for this.
That's fine. We've had everything from, answers like my son to, some amazing author that I've never heard of. Like, we learn from everything. The why is as important as the person. So take your time.
The people are also not alive any longer.
That's
Okay.
fine too.
Okay, so that's helpful. So for me, in my toughest times with the business, like reading the Stoic writings from like Marcus Aurelius and like Ryan Holiday's sort of distillation of it, that has been very helpful for me.
Oh, that's great to know. There's another thing that I have to learn.
And what should we all focus on?
I would want them to see exactly how the world's true poor is living. I think every young person before the age of 25 should go to a third world country and get embedded in it and really, really see what's up. Understand every purchase decision, understand what they're asking for when they're asking for a lower price, what that actually means.
My mom used to work for Laubach Literacy, specifically in the women in literacy group. And they were international, and she spent a lot of time in Asia, so parts of China, parts of India, and she would bring back I didn't get to go with her, I was tiny, but she would bring these photos back, and even just seeing and hearing her stories, that they would go to these rural parts of China and they would buy bikes because that's how everybody got around, and then they would like give their bikes away at the end of their trip to somebody in one of the villages, and how the people were just so, amazing. My mom had blonde hair, and like how they would react to her and everything. Like, it's just, I agree with you. I want to do it. I think it would be valuable for me today in my 40s to go see it and understand it.
So we talked about how chaos brings opportunity in a way. And how you had a moment of revelation when you broke a couple of ribs, and then you realized you had to let some things go. Well, that's really easy for us to say because we have enough going on that we can let things go. There are people who are riding on that razor's edge every single day. So I really appreciate that reminder.
Here's our wrap up.
This has been great. Thank you so
Thank-
much. I will continue to be a fangirl of Darn Good Yarn. And I might even
Sometimes think I
wear,
started a cult, but you know.
well, it's,
I'm gonna tell my mom about it. She's a knitter, so I'm gonna,
oh my God.
you know.
And you're at the Troy Farmers Market and you're probably at other farmers markets and you're going to be in Joann's soon. So watch out for Darn Good Yarns.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
But fun evolution. Because I've always envisioned, I'll tell you, I've always envisioned Darn Good Yarn. Like if I could have an experience where we have like, almost like if you go to a brewery for a tour,
Oh yeah.
but we have like dye gardens built in. And like, so you're growing things in there. You're having these workshops, you're having like these walking path ground sort of things. Like that would be like Darn Good Yarn 2040 or something like that.
That's amazing. Very cool.
Thanks so much, Nicole, and all of you for joining us on Subject to Change. Learn, grow, and enjoy each other's journey.